8:15 in the morning. The Strait of Hormuz, an American F-15E Strike Eagle banked hard over the narrow waterway. This was no ordinary patrol. The Iranian F-14 Tomcat on the radar screen was doing something no pilot had seen in a decade. The question was whether the man in the Iranian cockpit was following orders or starting a war of his own. The air over the Persian Gulf was thick with humidity, even at 20,000 feet. Below, the water was a deep, oily green. To the north, the jagged coastline of Iran rose like a wall of brown rock. To the south, the tip of Oman sat as a silent observer. For 40 years, this narrow stretch of water had been the world's most dangerous choke point. Today, that danger was about to be realized. Inside the cockpit of the American fighter, Major Mike Vance checked his fuel state. His call sign was Gator 11. He was a veteran of 3 deployments. He had flown hundreds of these missions. Usually, the Iranian pilots kept a professional distance. They would shadow the American jets. They would trade radar locks. Then they would turn back toward Bandar Abbas. This time, the Tomcat was not turning back. 8:17 in the morning. The weapons systems officer in the back seat spoke through the intercom. Gator. He is still accelerating. Heading 240. He is cutting the corner of the corridor. Gator adjusted his throttle. Confirm. He is inside the buffer zone. The controller at the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar broke in. Gator 11. This is Guardian. Be advised. The contact is designated Track 662. He is non-responsive on all guard frequencies. You are cleared to intercept and identify. Copy. Guardian. Gator replied. Engaging. The Strike Eagle accelerated. The twin engines pushed the jet through the sound barrier with a muffled thump. The cockpit vibrated for a second before the ride became smooth again. Gator looked through his head-up display. The digital box was already tracking the target. 5 miles away, the F-14 Tomcat was a dark speck against the haze. It was an old aircraft, a relic from the era of the Shah, but it was still a lethal platform. It carried the Phoenix missile, a weapon designed to kill bombers from 100 miles away. At this range, it was even more dangerous. Inside the Iranian cockpit, Captain Abbas held the stick with a steady hand. He was looking at his own instruments. His orders were clear. The Americans had been flying closer to the territorial limit every day for a week. Today, his commander had told him to push back. He was not told how far. Abbas felt the sweat under his flight suit. He knew the F-15E was a superior machine in a close-range dogfight. It had better electronics. It had more modern missiles. But he had the advantage of surprise. He also had the advantage of geography. If he fired, he would be over his own soil in 90 seconds. 8:19 in the morning. The two jets were now only 3 miles apart. They were closing at a combined speed of over 1,000 miles per hour. Gator keyed his radio. Guardian, I have a visual. It is a Tomcat. He is carrying a full load. 2 Phoenix, 2 Sparrow, 2 Sidewinder. The controller's voice was tense. Copy. Gator, proceed with caution. Do not cross the line. He is the one crossing the line, Gator muttered to his backseater. The American pilot pulled his jet into a climbing turn. He wanted the high ground. He wanted the sun at his back. He was following the standard rules of engagement. Show presence. Show intent. Do not fire unless fired upon. But the rules of engagement were written for rational actors. They were written for men who wanted to go home. As Gator looked down at the Iranian fighter, he saw the wings of the Tomcat sweep back. The aircraft began a sharp, aggressive climb directly toward him. He is coming up, the backseater shouted. Radar lock. We are spiked. Brake left. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 8:21 in the morning. The airspace over the Strait of Hormuz, the American F-15E Strike Eagle pulled into a hard left turn. 6 Gs of force pressed Major Mike Vance into his seat. His vision narrowed as the blood drained from his head. He grunted against the pressure. His flight suit inflated around his legs to keep him conscious. Inside his helmet, the sound was deafening. It was not the engine. It was the radar warning receiver. It was a high-pitched, steady tone. It meant the Iranian F-14 had a solid track. It meant a missile could be away in seconds. The weapon systems officer shouted over the intercom. "Brake! Brake! He is still on us. I am dropping chaff." Small bundles of aluminum foil bloomed behind the American jet. They were designed to confuse the Iranian radar. The steady tone broke into a stuttering chirp. Then it stopped. Gator leveled the wings. He looked over his shoulder. The Iranian Tomcat was a dark silhouette against the morning sun. It was no longer climbing. It was turning with them. This was not a standard intercept. A professional pilot would have broken off the lock after the first maneuver. This pilot was staying on their tail. 8:23 in the morning. "Guardian, this is Gator 1-1, the pilot called. "I was spiked by the contact. I am executing defensive maneuvers. The contact is continuing to pursue. Requesting instructions." The response from the control center in Qatar was immediate. "Gator, Guardian, you are authorized to defend yourself. Do not fire unless you are fired upon. Use non-lethal means to discourage the contact. Do you copy?" "Copy, Guardian," Gator said. "Non-lethal only." He looked at his displays. The two jets were now less than 2 miles apart. At these speeds, that distance was nothing. One mistake by either pilot would lead to a mid-air collision or a shoot-down. In the Iranian cockpit, Captain Abbas felt the vibration of his aircraft. The F-14 was old. The airframe groaned under the stress of the high-speed turn. His cockpit was a mess of analog gauges and green cathode ray tubes. It lacked the sleek glass displays of the American jet. But Abbas knew his plane. He knew its limits. His ground controller in Bandar Abbas was screaming into his headset. "Alpha, do not let them turn. Keep the pressure on. You must protect the coastline." Abbas did not reply. He was focused on the American jet. He saw the F-15E level out. It was a bait. He knew the Americans wanted him to overshoot. If he flew past them, they would be on his tail. He pulled back on the stick. He flared the big twin tails of the Tomcat. The aircraft slowed down rapidly. He stayed behind the Strike Eagle. "He is not biting," the American backseater said. "He knows what we are doing. Gator, he is closing. 1 mile. 8:25 in the morning." The situation was spiraling. The rules of engagement were clear, but the reality was messy. Gator knew he had to do something to break the Iranians' focus. He could not keep letting the Tomcat sit in his 6 o'clock position. "I am going to bring him across the nose," Gator said. "I want him to see us." He pulled the throttles back to idle. He kicked the rudder. The Strike Eagle skidded through the air. It was a violent, unpredictable move. The Iranian pilot was caught off guard. For a split second, the F-15E was no longer in front of the Tomcat. It was beside it. Gator looked to his right. He was less than 100 meters from the Iranian jet. He could see the pilot. He could see the desert camouflage on the wings. He could see the black nose of the Phoenix missiles. Then the Iranian pilot did something unexpected. He did not break away. He did not dive. He looked directly at Gator. Then he began to roll his aircraft toward the American jet. "He is coming over," the WSO yelled. "Collision! Collision! Pull up!" 8:26 in the morning. The sky over the Strait of Hormuz, Major Mike Vance hauled back on the stick. The F-15E Strike Eagle screamed as it clawed for altitude. The Iranian Tomcat had passed so close that the wake turbulence rocked the American jet like a leaf in a storm. "That was intentional," the weapons systems officer shouted. His voice was tight with adrenaline. "He almost clipped our wing. Gator, he is coming back around. High left." Gator did not answer immediately. He was focused on the horizon. He leveled the wings and checked his sensors. The Iranian pilot had not just performed a defensive maneuver. He had performed a combat roll over the top of the American fighter. It was an act of extreme aggression. It was a clear signal that the pilot of the Tomcat was no longer following the unspoken rules of the strait. "Guardian, Gator 1-1, the pilot called. His voice was forced into a professional calm. "Contact just executed a dangerous close-quarter maneuver. Less than 50 meters of separation. I am re-engaging to maintain visual. Copy, Gator. The controller in Qatar responded. Be advised. We are seeing increased activity at Bandar Abbas. 2 more signatures are on the taxiway. We are declaring a yellow alert for the sector. Do not cross into their territory. I repeat, stay in international airspace. 8:28 in the morning. 500 miles away, the Combined Air Operations Center was a hive of controlled chaos. Digital maps projected onto 40-foot screens showed the Strait of Hormuz as a maze of overlapping circles. Each circle was a threat range. Each icon was a life. A brigadier general stood in the center of the room. He watched the blue icon of Gator 11 and the red icon of the Iranian Tomcat merge and separate on the display. What is the status of the carrier? The general asked. The USS Abraham Lincoln is 200 miles out, sir, an officer replied. They have 2 F-18s on high alert. They can be on station in 15 minutes. Tell them to launch, the general ordered. I want eyes on that corridor. If this Iranian pilot is acting alone, we need to contain it. If this is a coordinated strike, we are already behind the clock. In Tehran, the atmosphere was equally sharp. Inside a concrete bunker, an Iranian colonel watched the same radar tracks. He was on a direct line to the airbase at Bandar Abbas. Captain Abbas is not responding to our warnings, the colonel said in Persian. He is pursuing the American. He believes they are over the line. Are they? A younger officer asked. The colonel looked at the screen. The boundary between international and sovereign Iranian airspace was a thin, invisible line on a map. In the heat of a 2G turn, that line ceased to exist. It does not matter what the map says now, the colonel replied. It only matters what the American pilot thinks. Tell the second flight to hold on the runway. We do not want a massacre. 8:30 in the morning. Back in the cockpit of the F-14, Captain Abbas was breathing heavily. The cockpit was hot. The sun was baking the glass canopy. He had seen the American pilot pull away. He knew he had sent a message, but the American was still there. The F-15E was now 3 miles out, sitting in a perch position. Abbas looked at his master arm switch. It was still in the safe position. His finger hovered near it. He felt a strange sense of clarity. For years, he had practiced for this moment. The defense of the motherland. The rejection of the foreign presence. He saw the American jet bank. It was showing its belly. A classic move to show that no weapons were active. But to Abbas, it looked like an opening. He is fast, Abbas whispered to himself, but he is arrogant. He reached forward and flipped the cover on the master arm switch. He toggled the switch to the arm position. A red light illuminated on his panel. The Phoenix missiles were now powered. The cooling systems were humming. Across the 3 miles of empty air, the American Weapons Systems officer saw his display change. The stuttering chirp of the radar warning turned into a solid, piercing scream. Gator. He is locked. He is hot. Master arm is hot. The warning signs were gone. The escalation was complete. Both sides were now committed to a path that had no easy exit. 8:31 in the morning. High over the entrance to the Persian Gulf, the cockpit of the American F-15E Strike Eagle was filled with the sound of a continuous, high-pitched tone. It was the sound of a death sentence. The Iranian F-14 Tomcat had a steady radar lock. A Phoenix missile could leave its rail at any moment. At this range, the American crew would have less than 4 seconds to react. Major Mike Vance felt his pulse pounding in his neck. He had to break the lock. He could not wait for the Iranian pilot to make the first move. But the rules of engagement were a cage. If he fired a missile, he started a war. If he did nothing, he died. The weapons systems officer spoke. His voice was a forced whisper. Gator, lock is solid. He is within the heart of the envelope. We have to maneuver now. Guardian, Gator 11. The pilot called. I am spiked. Requesting permission to use kinetic warning. There was a 3-second delay. It felt like an hour. The controller in Qatar came back. Gator, Guardian, you are cleared for a warning shot. 20mm only. Do not hit the target. I repeat, do not hit the target. 8:33 in the morning. Gator shifted his hand on the stick. He toggled the weapon select switch to gun. On his head-up display, the missile reticle vanished. It was replaced by a small, floating circle, with a dot in the center, the gun sight. He slammed the throttles forward. The Strike Eagle surged. He pulled the nose of the aircraft up and to the right. He was looking for a specific piece of sky. He needed to put a stream of lead 500 meters in front of the Iranian's canopy. "Going in," Gator said. He banked the heavy fighter. The Tomcat was visible now. It was a giant, twin-tailed beast of a plane. Gator tracked the movement of the Iranian jet. He stabilized the Pipper just ahead of the Tomcat's flight path. He squeezed the trigger. The M61 Vulcan cannon under the right wing root roared. It fired at a rate of 100 rounds per second. For 2 seconds, a stream of 20mm high-explosive incendiary rounds tore through the air. The tracers appeared as a solid line of white-hot light. They arched across the blue sky, passing directly in front of the Iranian cockpit. 8:34 in the morning. Inside the Iranian jet, Captain Abbas saw the flashes. The American rounds were so close, he could hear the supersonic crack of the projectiles passing his canopy. The smell of cordite and ozone seemed to fill his own cockpit. Most pilots would have broken away. Most pilots would have dived. For the deck, Abbas was not most pilots. He did not flinch. Instead of pulling away, he used the moment of the Americans' maneuver. Gator had given up his energy to take the shot. The Strike Eagle was now slightly higher and slower than it had been a moment ago. Abbas kicked the left rudder pedal and slammed the stick to the corner. The Tomcat groaned. The heavy fighter rolled onto its back. It was a high-G defensive to offensive transition, a classic dogfighting move. Abbas was no longer being hunted. He was the hunter again. "He is rolling," the American backseater screamed. "He is coming inside our turn. Gator, he did not brake. He is rolling into us." Gator looked over his shoulder. He saw the belly of the Tomcat. Then he saw the nose. The Iranian pilot was not bluffing. He was not intimidated by the warning. He was closing the distance. 8:35 in the morning. The two fighters were now in a rolling scissors maneuver. They were two 40-ton machines dancing around a central axis in the sky. Each pilot was trying to get his nose behind the other. They were losing altitude rapidly. They were dropping toward the water at 400 miles per hour. "Guardian, this is Gator," the pilot yelled. "Warning shot. Ineffective. The contact is aggressive. He is engaging. I am in a merge." The command center was silent for a heartbeat. The general in Qatar looked at the screen. The two icons were now a single, vibrating purple dot. "He did not back down," the general whispered. The strategy of a warning shot had failed. It had not de-escalated the situation. It had given the Iranian pilot the excuse he needed to go for the kill. The Americans had fired first. In the eyes of the man in the Tomcat, the war had already started. 8:36 in the morning. 2,000 feet above the water, the F-15E and the 14 were locked in a vertical spiral. At Mach 1.2, the air was like concrete. Every move required massive force. The American Strike Eagle was the more powerful machine, but the Iranian Tomcat was using its variable sweep wings to stay tight in the turns. Inside the American cockpit, the world was a blur of blue water and brown rock. Major Mike Vance felt the sweat stinging his eyes. He could not wipe it away. His hands were occupied with the stick and the throttles. He was fighting the jet as much as he was fighting the Iranian. The weapon systems officer spoke through the intercom. His breathing was heavy and ragged. "Gator, we are inside the bubble. Minimum range. I cannot get a seeker lock. We are too close for a sidewinder." "I know," Gator replied. "I am trying to create space." It was the ultimate tactical irony. The two most advanced fighters in the region were useless because they were too close to each other. Modern air-to-air missiles require several hundred meters to arm their warheads and engage their guidance fins. Inside that distance, they were just expensive pieces of metal. 8:38 in the morning. The jets leveled out just above the waves. The wake from their engines carved twin white lines across the green surface of the strait. Inside the Iranian cockpit, Captain Abbas was in a state of focused desperation. He could see the rivets on the American fighter. He could see the markings on the tail. His F-14 was vibrating so violently, he could barely read his instruments. The airframe was 40 years old. It was not designed for this kind of sustained high-G maneuvering at sea level. His backseater, the intercept officer, was shouting, "Abbas! The American is accelerating. He is trying to blow through. Do not let him get behind us." Abbas slammed the throttles into full afterburner. The twin engines of the Tomcat responded with a roar that shook his teeth. He felt the aircraft lurch forward. He was determined to stay in the fight. He did not care about the minimum range of his missiles. He was looking for a gun solution. He wanted to use his internal cannon to finish what the American had started with the warning shot. "He is staying with us," Gator said. "He is ignoring the overspeed warnings. This guy is going to break his plane before he breaks the turn." Gator. "Guardian is on the line," the backseater said. "They are seeing a mass launch from the mainland. Surface-to-air missile batteries are painting us. We are out of time." 8:40 in the morning. The geopolitical weight of the moment began to press down on the American pilot. If he stayed in this dogfight, he would eventually be shot down by a ground-based missile. If he turned to run, the Tomcat would have his back. The Strike Eagle was a multi-role fighter. It was heavy, it was loaded with fuel and sensors. The Tomcat was a pure interceptor. In this specific slice of sky, at this specific altitude, they were perfectly matched. It was a knife fight in a phone booth. Neither man could win without the other dying. Gator looked at his digital display. The Iranian pilot had corrected his flight path. The Tomcat was now drifting toward the Americans' 6 o'clock. "Position again. I am going vertical," Gator said. "I am going to force him to stall. He will follow you," the WSO warned. "Let him," Gator replied. "Let us see who has the better engines." Gator pulled the stick back to his stomach. The Strike Eagle pointed its nose directly at the sun. The afterburners carved a path through the humid air. Behind him, the Iranian Tomcat did exactly what he expected. It followed the American into the vertical. 2 jets, 4 engines, 80,000 pounds of thrust. They were climbing toward the edge of space, but only one of them would have enough power to stay there. 8:41 in the morning. High altitude over the Strait of Hormuz. The world was falling away. The F-15E Strike Eagle was a pillar of fire. It climbed through 32,000 feet. The air was thin and freezing. Outside the canopy, the sky was changing, from a bright azure to a deep, bruised purple. Major Mike Vance felt the jet shudder. He was trading his speed for altitude. This was the vertical fight. It was a test of raw physics and raw nerves. "Speed is dropping," the weapons systems officer said. His voice was a strained rasp. 200 knots. 180. He is still with us. He is still climbing. Gator looked in his mirrors. The Iranian Tomcat was a ghost in the haze below him. The F-14 was iconic, but its wings were swept fully forward now. It was fighting to find lift where there was almost none. It looked like a predatory bird reaching the end of its flight. The massive twin tails of the Iranian jet were shaking. 150 knots, Gator said. The Strike Eagle began to buffet. The nose wanted to hunt. The flight control computers were working 1,000 times a second to keep the aircraft from falling into a flat spin. Gator was hanging on his engines. 2 Pratt & Whitney turbofans were fighting the vacuum of the upper atmosphere. 8:41 and 30 seconds in the morning. In the Iranian cockpit, the world was spinning. Captain Abbas felt the controls go soft. The stick felt like it was connected to nothing. His engines were coughing. The thin air was not enough to feed the massive intakes of the Tomcat. He was past the limit. He was in the danger zone where the engines could flame out at any moment. "Compressor stall," the Iranian intercept officer shouted. "Left engine is surging. Abbas, pull out. We are going to spin." Abbas ignored the warning. He saw the American jet just 500 meters above him. It was hanging there, suspended. A perfect target. The American was at his weakest point. The Strike Eagle was nearly stationary in the sky. Abbas toggled his weapon select. He went to the Sidewinder. The seeker head in the nose of his missile began to growl in his headset. It was searching for the heat of the American engines. The growl turned into a high-pitched, electric scream. "I have a lock," Abbas whispered. His finger touched the launch button. 8:42 in the morning. Inside the American cockpit, the alarms returned. They were louder than before. More urgent. "Launch warning," the WSO yelled. "He is hot. He is hot. Gator, we are too slow to brake. We are sitting ducks." Gator slammed the stick to the left. He used the last of his aerodynamic authority to kick the tail around. The jet fell over on its side. For a fraction of a second, the pilot felt weightless. Then the nose pointed down toward the green water miles below. Gravity took hold. He looked at his own tactical display. The weapons systems officer's fingers were flying over the glass screens. "I have him," the WSO said. "Seeker is tracked. Master arm is on. Gator, do it." Gator saw the Iranian jet through his canopy. It was falling away below him. The Tomcat had finally stalled. It was tumbling through the air. Its left engine was spitting long tongues of orange flame. It was vulnerable. It was a kill. "Shoot him," the WSO commanded. "Shoot him now." Gator's finger tightened on the trigger. The safety was off. The tone in his ears was a solid, vibrating note of certain death. I can see the individual panels on the Iranian jet. I can see the pilot's helmet. The two jets were falling back toward the Earth at terminal velocity. They were locked together in a mechanical embrace of duty and hatred. One squeeze of the trigger and the war would begin. One squeeze and the Strait of Hormuz would become a graveyard. Gator breathed in. He began to apply the final ounces of pressure to the trigger. 8:43 in the morning. 12,000 feet. Major Mike Vance felt the first stage of the trigger click. In the back seat, the weapons systems officer was calling for the shot. The Iranian Tomcat was a massive target. It was struggling to regain control after the stall. One missile would end the threat. It would also end the peace. Suddenly, the radio in Gator's ear did not carry the voice of his controller. It carried a scream of electronic noise. Then, a new voice broke through on the emergency guard frequency. It was not military. It was the calm, rhythmic voice of a civilian air traffic controller from Dubai. "All aircraft in Sector 7. This is Dubai Center. We have a primary target deviation. Iran Air Flight 812. You are entering a restricted military zone. Respond immediately." Gator's finger froze. On his tactical display, a new icon appeared. It was not a red triangle or a blue square. It was a yellow circle. A civilian. "Gator, look up," the WSO shouted. A massive shadow fell over the two fighter jets, emerging from a thick bank of morning haze. At 10,000 feet was a Boeing 777. The wide-body airliner was painted in the blue and white livery of Iran Air. It was descending toward Bandar Abbas. It was exactly where it was supposed to be on its flight path, but the dogfight had drifted into its corridor. 8:44 in the morning. The American F-15E and the Iranian F-14 were less than 500 meters apart. The airliner was less than 800 meters above them. The wake turbulence from the massive Boeing hit the fighters like a physical blow. Gator's jet rolled violently to the set, right. He fought the stick to keep from colliding with the Iranian. In his peripheral vision, he saw the Tomcat doing the same. The Iranian pilot was struggling with his burning engine. The F-14 banked hard to the left, avoid the airliner's flight path. "Guardian, this is Gator," the pilot yelled. "Abort." The box. I repeat, Iran Air is in the engagement zone. In the command center in Qatar, the general felt the line to Tehran. The general ordered, "Tell them we are breaking off. Tell them to tell their pilot to weld. Do the same. If anyone fires now, they will hit that Boeing." 8:45 in the morning. Inside, the Iranian cockpit, Captain Abbas was staring at the belly of the airliner. He could see the individual windows. He could see the landing gear doors beginning to cycle open. He knew that flight. It was the morning run from Dubai. There were families on that plane. There were people who had nothing to do with this border dispute. The fire warning. Light for his left engine was still flashing red. His aircraft was barely flying. He looked across the gap. He saw the American F-15E. The American had his nose pointed away. The weapons were no longer tracked. Abbas felt a surge of cold reality. If he had fired his Sidewinder 10 seconds ago, the heat seeker might have ignored the American and locked onto the massive heat signature of the Boeing's engines. He would have murdered 300 of his own people. He reached up and flipped the master arm switch to safe. The red light on his dashboard went dark. He keyed his radio. He did not call his command. He spoke directly to the American pilot. This is the Iranian aircraft. I am disengaging. I have a mechanical failure. Gator heard the voice. It was the first time. He had heard the man he was trying to kill. The voice was steady. It was professional. It was the voice of a man who had just looked into the abyss and stepped back. Copy. Iranian aircraft, Gator replied. I am breaking south. Good luck with your engine. The two fighters peeled away in opposite directions. The Boeing 777 continued its descent. The passengers inside never knew how close they had come to being the first casualties of a new war. 8:46 in the morning. Over the southern coastline of Iran, the F-15E Strike Eagle banked south, away from the civilian corridor. Major Mike Vance felt the adrenaline beginning to recede. It left him feeling cold and hollow. He checked his mirrors one last time. The Iranian Tomcat was a receding speck of gray, trailing a thin ribbon of black smoke from its damaged port engine. Guardian, Gator 1-1, the pilot called. I am clear of the contact. I am heading for the tanker. The Iranian pilot has declared a mechanical failure. He is RTB. The voice of the controller in Qatar was noticeably different. The tension had been replaced by a professional, clinical tone. Copy, Gator. We have you on radar. The Boeing is clear and on final approach for Bandar Abbas. Be advised. The surface-to-air missile batteries on the coast have gone to standby. The sector is returning to green. Inside the American cockpit, the weapons systems officer exhaled a long, shaky breath. That was too close, Mike. If that Boeing had been 30 seconds later, or if we had been 30 seconds faster. Don't, Gator said. It didn't happen. 8:48 in the morning. 5 miles to the north, Captain Abbas was fighting his aircraft. The 14 was sluggish. Without the thrust of the left engine, the jet wanted to yaw toward the dead side. He had to keep constant pressure on the right rudder pedal. Abbas, base is calling, his intercept officer said. They want a full report on why you engaged. They are saying the Americans are claiming we crossed the line. Abbas looked down at the GPS display. It was an old unit, bolted to the side of the cockpit. According to his screen, he had never left Iranian airspace, but he knew how radar worked. He knew how the curvature of the Earth and the heat of the day could distort a track. Tell them the American fired a warning shot, Abbas said. Tell them I defended the aircraft, but tell them I am coming home now. I have a fire in the hold. He looked out his canopy. The Boeing 777 was now safely on the ground in Bandar Abbas. Its white fuselage gleamed in the sun. It was a silent witness to a tragedy that had been averted by a fraction of a second. 8:50 in the morning. In the command center in Qatar, the Brigadier General sat down for the first time in an hour. He watched the blue icon of Gator 1-1 move toward the refueling tanker over the Gulf of Oman. The threat was over. For now. Get the footage from the Strike Eagle's targeting pod, the general ordered. I want to see exactly how close those tracers came to the Tomcat. And I want the transcript of the radio call from the Iranian pilot. Sir, an intelligence officer asked. He called the American directly, the general said. He broke protocol to prevent a collision with a civilian. That tells me this wasn't an ordered provocation. This was two pilots getting caught in a loop. We need to make sure Washington understands that before the politicians start talking about a retaliatory strike." The room was quiet now. The high-pitched electronic pings of the radar were the only sound. The crisis had moved from the cockpits to the conference rooms. The danger had shifted from missiles to memos. But for the men in the air, the world still felt like it was made of glass. 8:51 in the morning. 10,000 feet over the Gulf of Oman. The American F-15E Strike Eagle approached the refueling tanker. The Boeing KC-135 was a massive, reassuring presence in the morning sky. Major Mike Vance focused on the refueling boom. He needed the precision of the task to settle his mind. Gator 1-1. "You are cleared to the pre-contact position," the tanker pilot said. "Copy. Moving into position," Gator replied. He nudged the throttles. The Strike Eagle moved slowly toward the long, metal arm of the tanker. The connection was made with a heavy metallic clunk. Fuel began to flow at thousands of pounds per minute. "Gator. Guardian is back," the weapons systems officer said. "They are patched through from the carrier. Admiral wants a word." 8:53 in the morning. Gator 1-1. "This is 704. Good work out there, son." The Admiral's voice was thin but clear. The Iranian government just sent a flash message through the Swiss embassy. They are calling it a misunderstanding, a pilot error during a training exercise. Gator tightened his grip on the stick. "It didn't feel like a training exercise, sir. He had a lock. He was hot." "We know," the Admiral replied. "But they are admitting fault for the proximity. That is a first. They are saying their pilot had a navigation failure. They are standing down their air defenses for the day. You are to return to base immediately. No further contact." "Copy, sir," Gator said, returning to base. 8:55 in the morning. Across the water, the Iranian F-14 touched down on the runway at Bandar Abbas. The tires smoked as they hit the hot tarmac. The aircraft slowed down, its single functioning engine whining in the heat. Captain Abbas taxied the jet into a hardened hangar. As soon as the engines died, the silence was absolute. He sat in the cockpit for a long time. He did not remove his helmet. He looked at the master arm switch. It was in the safe position. He had been seconds away from changing his life and the history of his country forever. His intercept officer climbed out of the rear seat. He did not say a word. He just tapped Abbas on the shoulder and climbed down the ladder. Outside the hangar, the Iranian colonel was waiting. He watched as Abbas finally stood up and descended to the ground. "The Americans are calling it a de-escalation," the colonel said. "They are not going to retaliate for the radar lock." Abbas looked at the ground. "And the warning shot?" "It never happened," the colonel replied. "That is the agreement. Neither side fired. Neither side was threatened. The Boeing was the only thing anyone saw." Abbas nodded. He understood. The truth was too dangerous to be written down. The reality of how close they had come to a total war was a secret that would be kept by the two men in the cockpits and the sensors in the sky. The crisis had resolved. The missiles were back on their rails. The world would wake up to news of a routine patrol in the strait. Only a few would know that for 4 minutes, the world had been balanced on the tip of a 20mm round. 3 days later, Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. The morning sun was already baking the concrete. Major Mike Vance sat in a windowless room, in the intelligence wing. On the table before him was a stack of high-resolution satellite photos and a digital playback of his own cockpit camera. He was wearing his desert flight suit, but he felt far away from the cockpit. "The official report is finished," a lieutenant colonel said, sliding a folder across the table. "It is being classified as a near miss during congested transit. No mention of the gunburst. No mention of the Tomcat's stall." Gator looked at the photos. They showed the Iranian airbase at Bandar Abbas. In one corner of the frame, he could see a single F-14 parked under a camouflage net. Its left engine bay was open. Technicians were clustered around it. "Is he being disciplined?" Gator asked. "Our sources say he was grounded for 48 hours, the officer replied. "But yesterday, he was promoted. The Iranian command is calling him a hero for not firing on the Boeing. They are spin-doctoring it as a story of Iranian restraint in the face of American aggression." Gator leaned back in his chair. And what are we calling it? We are calling it a Tuesday, the officer said with a grim smile. The Pentagon wants this buried. The diplomatic situation is too fragile. If the public knew how close we came to a regional conflict because of a navigation error and a twitchy trigger finger, the pressure to escalate would be unstoppable. 1 week later, Strategic Assessment Center, Washington, D.C. Military analysts gathered in a secure conference room to break down the encounter. They did not look at the emotions of the pilots. They looked at the data. They looked at the response times of the surface-to-air, missile batteries, and the decision-making cycle of the Combined Air Operations Center. The Persian Threshold event demonstrates the limits of modern de-escalation. A senior analyst began. We rely on technology to prevent war. We use transponders, radar corridors, and automated warnings. But in this case, the technology failed. The transponders were ignored. The warnings were perceived as threats. The analyst clicked a button, showing a graph of the two jets' flight paths. The only thing that stopped a shooting war was a human decision. It was a choice made by two men who had every reason to kill each other. They saw a third party, the civilian airliner, and they recognized a shared responsibility that superseded their orders. Modern warfare is often described as a game of buttons and screens. It is seen as a clinical, distant affair managed by algorithms. But the lessons of the Strait of Hormuz suggested otherwise. When the systems failed and the missiles were armed, the fate of millions rested on the judgment of two individuals moving at Mach 1. Hours later, the Persian Gulf, Gator was back in the air. He was flying the same track he had flown a week ago. The water was still green. The rocks were still brown. The sky was still a deep, empty blue. He looked at his radar. A single contact appeared 60 miles to the north. It was an Iranian jet. It was flying a steady, predictable course. It did not accelerate. It did not lock its radar. Gator adjusted his headset. He did not say anything. He simply watched the icon on his screen. Somewhere across that invisible line, another pilot was doing the same. They were two professionals, separated by history and politics, but joined by the memory of a morning when the world almost ended. They would continue to circle each other. They would continue to watch. No missiles flew. No ships were lost. But the world had changed. The line had been crossed, and both sides had chosen to step back. In the age of high-tech destruction, the greatest victory was the one that left the sky empty. The strait remained open. The tankers continued to move. The silence of the desert morning returned, heavy and fragile.